comfortable with?
Well, I spent 25 years campaigning for Britain to leave the European Union. I was a businessman that came into politics motivated by getting back control and the democracy of our nation. And so we've achieved it. We've won a referendum. And I haven't disappeared completely. I haven't retired. I've just taken a step back, and I'll let somebody else take on the job of leading UKIP. And I can perhaps be a bit freer to commentate on what's going on. Now, as we speak, Theresa May is in Buckingham Palace talking to the Queen. And just a little thought for your viewers, the first Prime Minister that Queen Elizabeth II had an audience with was Winston Churchill. So it's pretty remarkable. It really is amazing, isn't it, that she's been there that time.
That is one span of history, one amazing. And, you know, a lot of people say, Winston Churchill, obviously we know what he did with regard to history. Many people believe this is a sort of a Independence Day, if you will, for the UK. But I do want to ask you a little bit more about Theresa May. What you've heard from her in the last few days, you say you came from business. She doesn't sound like a pro-business person to me. She doesn't sound like what Americans would traditionally believe a conservative would sound like.
No, well, David Cameron didn't sound like a conservative, you know, and his parting shot is that I left Britain. My two great achievements were a massive increase in the foreign aid budget and the introduction of gay marriage without it being in the manifesto. And similarly, Theresa May has launched, it would seem, even before becoming Prime Minister, an attack on business and the commercial sector. So, yeah, I've got concerns about that. But the real worry I've got is this. This referendum was the biggest constitutional decision this country has taken probably since the English Civil War 350 years ago. And on this division, she was on the wrong side. She supported a status quo where our laws and our courts were in Brussels and Luxembourg. So I'm not very happy that she's Prime Minister. However, she is, and she has said that Brexit means Brexit. Well, we'll see. But I'm going to be watching this process like a hawk.
And I think you'll be I think you'll also be keeping her feet to the fire. I want to ask you about the other part of this, of course, and that's the European Union, more specifically Angela Merkel, who, by the way, just admitted that terrorists have entered Germany using their refugee program. We know that you're not surprised, but what does this admission mean? Well, look,
we have decided to leave the European Union. And that is, I'm delighted to say what we'll do. We will get our country back, and those buildings you see behind me, once again, will be the place where we govern this country from. But the EU itself has massive problems, and Angela Merkel last summer made, I think, the worst policy mistake by any European leader since 1945 by saying anyone that wants to come across the Mediterranean in a boat, whoever they are, wherever they're from, is welcome into the EU. Now, we had the Dusseldorf bomb plot that was stopped by the German secret services. All four of those people had come across the Mediterranean last year. We also, dare I say, had sex attacks that took place on New Year's Eve in Cologne and Hamburg and elsewhere on a scale that I think is absolutely horrendous. And yesterday, and you may not have caught this yet, but yesterday the French head of their own security services said he fears, and I quote, a civil war in France because of the cultural divisions that are taking place with mass immigration from northern Africa. Now, this isn't me speaking.
Right.
This is a very senior French figure. So be in no doubt that Brexit or no Brexit, the European Union itself, firstly with its migrant policy, its big cultural divides, and secondly, if I give you a tip, guys, watch the Eurozone, watch the Italian banking system, watch what's happening in Greece. This project, this European project, is dying before your very eyes.
Yeah, you know, it's so interesting. I just mentioned to one of the previous guests that it feels like Italy took advantage of the notion that they would bolt by getting some form of commitment to save their banks, which are struggling with massive debts. To your point, we've got our own issues here in America. You're going to be going to the Republican National Convention next week. This is going to be one heck of an election here. I want your thoughts on Donald Trump and also his search for a vice president and this rejection of the elites on both sides of the Atlantic.
Well, I think there's one big message that I'm going to bring to Cleveland next week, And by the way, you know, I won't interfere in American politics. President Obama came to London and tried to tell us how to vote in the Brexit referendum, and that backfired. So I'm not coming to tell people how to vote, but I am coming to say this. There is one massive lesson from the Brexit referendum, and it's simply this. The establishment in Westminster is, I think, in many ways similar to the establishment in Washington. We'd lost touch here with real England and real Britain, and I suspect that much of Washington has lost touch with real America. And what we did in the Brexit campaign is we inspired the little people, the people who previously have felt their voices would never be heard, the people who perhaps have never voted in their lives. We inspired them to go out and vote in that Brexit referendum, and that is what got us over the line. And the lesson, I think, for the Republican Party is it's got to start engaging with real America and getting people back into those polling booths if it wants to win. Now, as for Trump, he clearly lacks experience in politics, but that doesn't necessarily mean he can't do the job properly. But I do think, you know, his choice of VP and the team that he puts before the American people is absolutely crucial. He does need people with experience of how the game works.
Well, you're intimately familiar then with our political process. Just moments ago, we heard Jeff Sessions, now Senator Jeff Sessions, on his way to meet with Donald Trump. Donald Trump has met with Mike Pence earlier today, along with his family and Newt Gingrich. Is there any one of those three that you think would be a better fit for him?
Well, you know what? I'm proud to call Jeff Sessions a friend. I've met him many times. We correspond on a regular basis. And I don't know the others. I can't comment directly on them. But I believe people like Jeff Sessions to be experienced people and straightforward, honest people. And I think that's a bit of what America